Hello and welcome back to the show. You are listening to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. And today we are doing something a little different. We're taking a deep dive into a topic that sits at this really fascinating and frankly kind of unexpected intersection.
It really is a unique space.
It is, because usually when we think about technology, printer drivers, ink cartridges, paper jams, we think about frustration. We think about office work. We think about the mundane. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have grief. You have memory. You have the heavy emotional work of saying goodbye to someone you love.
Right. Those two things don't seem like they should belong in the same sentence. One is, mechanical and cold, and the other is just deeply human and raw.
Exactly. But today, we're exploring exactly where those two worlds collide. We're basing this deep dive on a really comprehensive guide titled Mastering Professional Home Funeral Program Printing.
Right.
And before you tune out thinking, I don't need a 60-minute lesson on how to fix a printer, let me stop you.
Okay.
Because this isn't really about the printer.
No, not at all. Not really.
This is about control. It's about agency. And it's about the hidden mechanics of how we memorialize people. When we look at the source material, particularly the insights from the experts at the funeral program site, the mission here isn't just technical troubleshooting. It's about removing mystery and anxiety from a process that usually happens when people are at their most vulnerable.
That's the key context here. When you're in the middle of grief, the world feels chaotic. You've lost control of the narrative in a way. And suddenly you have this task printing the programs. It seems small. But if the printer jams or the colors are wrong or the paper tears, it doesn't just feel like a technical glitch, it feels like a failure.
Oh, wow.
It feels like you're failing the person you're trying to honor.
That is such a heavy burden to carry over a piece of paper.
It is. It's immense. So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is to walk through this guide and just strip away that mystery. We want to take that anxiety, that fear of, will this look amateur, and replace it with dignity, clarity, and, confidence.
Right.
We're going to talk about the emotional weight of these documents, but we're also going to get into the nitty-gritty of edge-to-edge printing, paper psychology, and why your printer's default settings are basically lying to you.
They are lying to us.
Oh, they are absolutely deceiving you, but we'll get to that in a bit.
I can't wait to unpack that.
Yeah.
But first, I want to start with the why. I'm a curious person. I love learning how things work, but I was really struck by the tone of the source material. It starts by acknowledging that creating a funeral program is one of the most emotionally significant tasks a family can undertake.
Yeah.
Why is a single sheet of folded paper just so heavy?
It's a profound question, isn't it? If you sort of zoom out and look at the timeline of a funeral service, everything is fleeting. The eulogy is spoken, and then those words just dissolve into the air. Maybe it's recorded, maybe not, but the moment passes. The flowers, they're beautiful, sure, but they wilt within a week.
Right. They're temporary.
Exactly. They get thrown out or composted. But the program is the artifact. It's the tangible piece. The source material refers to it as a tangible expression of love, memory, and respect.
That's powerful.
It is. It's the one thing that attendees take with them when they leave the church or the funeral home.
I've seen this in my own life.
Yeah.
You go to a service and you don't throw the program away.
You
can't.
You never do. And the research, it backs this up. These documents don't end up in the recycling bin. They end up in family Bibles. They end up in memory drawers. I've seen them tucked into the frames of mirrors or pinned to refrigerators for years.
Decades.
For decades, exactly. So for a family creating one, the pressure is immense because they aren't just making a schedule of events. They are creating a historical record. They are, in a sense, publishing the final chapter of that person's life.
And that brings us right to the fear factor. Because if this document is that important, if it's going to live in a Bible for 40 years, the idea of doing it yourself, DIYing it at your kitchen table, feels incredibly risky.
It does.
The source mentions that families worry that printing at home means settling.
That is the most common barrier we see in the material. There's this pervasive myth that professional means outsourced and DIY means compromise.
Yeah, that it's less than.
Right. People think, if I really honored this person, I would pay a shop to do it properly. They worry about a lack of dignity, a lack of respect in the final product.
But let's clip that script for a moment, just as the source material does, because the experts argue that home printing actually allows for more intimacy.
It absolutely does, and this is a really crucial point. Think about the logistics of a commercial print shop. To them, you're job number 405.
Just a number in a queue.
Exactly. You have a deadline. You have to submit your files by Tuesday at 5:00 p.m. Once those plates are spun or that digital queue is loaded, it's done. There's no going back.
It's rigid.
It's extremely rigid. But grief isn't rigid.
No.
Grief is fluid. Memory is fluid. When you do this at home, you bypass those timelines. You gain control. You regain some of that agency we talked about.
So talk to me about the storytelling aspect of that control. What does that look like in practice?
Well, okay, imagine it's 2:00 a.m. the night before the service. You're sitting there looking at the draft on your screen, and suddenly you remember a specific poem your grandmother used to recite. Or you find an old photo in a shoebox that is just perfect. It captures her life exactly. It's that one picture.
If you used a print shop, it's too late. The job's already been sent.
Exactly. It's too late. You'd have to call them, beg them, probably pay a rush fee if they can even do it. But if you're at home, you open the file, you type in the poem, you scan the photo, you make the change right there.
Wow.
That ability to make last-minute edits isn't just a convenience, it's an act of love. It allows the tribute to be as accurate and heartfelt as possible right up to the very last second.
That is a really powerful point. It reclaims the process. Instead of just managing logistics and sending emails back and forth, the actual act of creating the program becomes part of the grieving process itself.
Yes.
It's active participation.
Precisely. It's empowerment through knowledge. But, and this is a big but, that empowerment completely falls apart if the technology fights you.
Right.
And that is where the anxiety comes from. You want that intimacy, you want that control, but you're terrified the printer is going to leave a weird white stripe down the side of the photo or smudge the text.
Oh, the dreaded white border.
Yeah.
This is the perfect transition to our second segment, which is all about demystifying edge-to-edge printing. Because I feel like this is the technical villain of our story.
It is the nemesis of the DIY printer. It's the #1 complaint, hands down.
So let's unpack this. The source material spends a lot of time on this concept. I think most of us assume, hey, I made a design on my computer, the background is blue all the way to the edge of the screen, I hit print, the paper should be blue all the way to the edge. But that's rarely what happens.
It is almost never what happens by default. This is the white border frustration. You print it out, and suddenly there's this 1/4-inch white margin ringing your beautiful design.
And it just looks wrong.
It looks like a mistake. It looks amateur. And the reason isn't usually that you designed it wrong. It's that you haven't satisfied what the source calls the triad of success.
The triad of success. I like that. It sounds like we were entering a kung fu movie. Bring it down for us. What are the 3 things we need?
Okay, so according to the experts at the funeral program site, edge-to-edge printing, where the ink literally goes off the side of the paper, requires 3 distinct elements working in perfect harmony.
3 things. Okay.
If you miss one, you get the border. Even if you get 2 out of 3 right, you fail. It's all or nothing.
Okay, what is #1, the first pillar?
#1, you need a printer that physically supports borderless printing.
Physically supports it. So some printers they can't. It's impossible for them.
Correct. And this requires a little visualization of how a printer works. Inside that machine, there are these little wheels, these rollers that rip the paper to pull it through.
Right.
Usually the printer needs a small margin, about 1/4 of an inch, where it doesn't spray ink because that is where the rollers are physically holding the paper.
That makes sense. It needs something to grab onto.
Exactly. Furthermore, if the printer sprayed ink all the way to the edge and the paper wasn't perfectly aligned, it would spray ink inside the machine.
Oh, a mess.
A total disaster. It would coat the mechanics in wet ink, which would get on every single piece of paper after that.
So the border is a safety feature for the machine. It's protecting itself.
Exactly. Now, printers that do support borderless printing have a special design. They usually have a small sponge or an absorbent channel that sits just underneath the paper path.
A sponge.
A sponge. This allows the print head to safely overspray past the edge of the sheet, knowing that any excess ink that misses the paper will be caught by that sponge instead of gumming up the works.
I had no idea there was a sponge down there. That's fascinating.
It is the unsung hero of borderless printing. But here is the nuance the source highlights, and it's a huge catch. Just because a printer says borderless on the box, it doesn't mean it's borderless for everything.
What do you mean?
Many consumer printers, maybe most of them, support borderless printing on 4x6 photo paper. They assume if you're printing borderless, you're printing a snapshot from your vacation.
Right, for Jodo album.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But they often do not support it on 8.5x1 letter paper or legal paper, which is what you need for a program.
Oh, wow. So you could test it on a photo, think you're safe, and then get to the actual program paper and it just fails.
Exactly. The option will just be grayed out in the menu. It won't even let you select it. So that's requirement 1. Hardware that explicitly supports borderless letter size or legal size printing.
Okay, that's a huge tip. Requirement 2.
Requirement 2 is the driver settings. You have to go into the software, into the print dialog box, and specifically tell the computer that you want borderless mode. It will never assume you want it. You have to manually select it.
Got it. And requirement 3.
Requirement 3 is the design itself. It must include something called bleed.
Okay, we're going to get into bleed in a minute because that feels like a whole topic on its own. But sticking with this triad, it really sounds like a lot of families fail because they have 2 out of 3.
All the time. That's the main source of frustration. You might have a borderless printer and a great design, but if you leave the driver on standard, you get a border.
Or you have the right settings, but the printer just can't physically do it.
Exactly. You might have the settings perfect, but if the printer hardware can't do it, you get a border. It's a logic puzzle, and you need all 3 pieces to solve it.
Okay, let's talk about the hardware part of that triad in more detail then. The source material has a very specific preference here, which surprised me. I always thought laser printers were the business professional standard and inkjets were for, like, school projects.
Yeah, that's a common perception.
But for funeral programs, the source says, go inkjet. Why is that?
This is a classic case of using the right tool for the job. You're absolutely correct that laser printers are the kings of crisp text and speed. If you're printing a 50-page contract, use a laser, no question.
Okay.
But a funeral program is rarely just text. It is almost always a collage. You have photographs, often older, scanned photographs. You have gradients, maybe a soft sky background or a floral texture.
Right, you want that softness. You want emotion in the images.
Exactly. Inkjet printers use liquid ink. They spray microscopic droplets that literally blend into the paper fibers. This allows for much, much smoother color gradients and better photo reproduction, especially for skin tones.
Ah, okay. And laser printers.
Laser toner sits on top of the paper. It's a plastic powder that gets melted on by a hot roller. It can look a bit shiny, a bit waxy, and it really struggles with those subtle transitions in a photo of a face or a sunset.
It creates that banding effect, right, where the sky looks like it's made of stripes.
Yes, exactly. Banding is a huge issue. And there's another major problem with laser printers for this specific application: the fold.
The fold, what about the fill?
Since laser toner sits on top of the paper like a thin layer of plastic, when you fold the paper, that toner often cracks. It breaks.
Oh.
You get a jagged white line running right down the spine of the program, breaking up the cover image.
I've seen that. I never knew why it happened. It makes the program look worn out before anyone has even held it.
Precisely. It undermines all the work you did. Inkjet ink, on the other hand, soaks into the paper. It dyes the fibers themselves, so when you fold it, the color is consistent all the way through the crease.
That makes perfect sense. For a memorial where you want warmth, depth, and durability, the inkjet is generally the superior tool in a home setting.
Without a doubt.
Now let's talk about a very stressful scenario the source mentions: the crisis purchase.
Yes. The midnight run to the big box store. The panic buy.
We've all been there for something, but in this context, it's just heartbreaking. You realize your old printer is broken, or it's out of ink and you can't find the cartridge. It's the day before the funeral. You run to the store. You're staring at a wall of 100 printers.
It's overwhelming.
What are the non-negotiables? What is the checklist you need in your head?
The source lists 4 key features you absolutely need to look for on the box. If you're standing in that aisle under that fluorescent lighting, look for these. First, as we just discussed, borderless support on letter or legal paper.
Read the fine print on the box.
Read the fine print. It has to say the size. Second, high color resolution. Most modern photo inkjets have this, but it's worth verifying. You want something that mentions photo quality printing.
Okay, what's third?
Third, and this is crucial for the feel of the program, manual paper feed options, or a rear paper tray.
Why is manual feed so important? I usually just shove the paper in the tray at the bottom.
Because of the paperweight. Think about it. If you want that professional feel, you're likely using a thicker paper or a light cardstock, not flimsy copy paper.
Right.
If you try to run thick cardstock through the standard bottom tray of a printer, it has to do this really tight U-turn inside the machine to come out the top.
The U-turn. That sounds like a recipe for a jam.
It is the #1 cause of paper jams. That U-turn is where jams happen. It's where the paper gets curled and creased. A manual feed or a rear tray usually allows the paper to go through a much straighter path.
Ah, so it's a direct route.
A much straighter path. Gravity helps you. It handles heavy stock much, much better.
Okay, so you're not fighting the physics of the paper.
Correct. And finally, the fourth point is related. Check the compatibility with heavier paperweights. Some printers simply aren't strong enough to pull a 40-pound bond paper or a 50-pound cover stock through. The specifications on the box or online should list a max media weight.
Wow, that knowledge is preventative. If you know to look for borderless letter capability and a rear feed tray on the box, you could save yourself a complete breakdown at 3:00 a.m.
100%. Knowledge is the best defense against that anxiety. You're making an informed choice, not a desperate one.
So let's assume we have the right machine. We've got a good inkjet, it does borderless on letter, it has a rear feed. Now we enter what you call the battlefield of settings. The source makes a really bold claim here. It says, settings, not design skills, are usually why home prints fail.
It is absolutely true. You could have a design created by a professional graphic artist, something that looks stunning on your screen, but if you print it with default settings, it will look like a washed-out draft.
Why are the defaults so bad? You'd think the manufacturer would want their printer to produce the best possible image out of the box.
You would think so, but they're not optimizing for quality. The manufacturers are optimizing for two things: speed and ink economy.
Money.
It's always money. They want you to print your boarding pass or your recipe quickly and without using too much ink so you think their cartridges last a long time. They are not optimizing for archive quality memorial tribute.
So you have to manually override the machine's cheap instincts.
You have to take manual control. And the biggest trap, the one the source spends the most time on, is a setting called scaling, or fit to page.
Okay, let's really get into this because I have done this. I have absolutely clicked fit to page because I thought I was being safe. I didn't want anything to get cut off.
And that is exactly why the feature exists. It is a safety net. The computer sees your design, it sees the paper size, and it thinks, I'd better shrink this by 3% just to make absolutely sure the edges don't get chopped.
But when you shrink an 8.5 by 11 image by 3% and print it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper,
you create a gap. You've created a margin. The edges become empty white space. You have single-handedly introduced the border you were trying to avoid.
So the safety net is actually the trap.
Precisely. To get true edge-to-edge printing, you must go into the settings and set scaling to 100%, or actual size. You have to disable that safety net.
That feels scary, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because what if it does cut something off?
That is where the design comes in, which we'll discuss with Bleed. But you have to trust the process. You have to tell the printer, do not shrink this. Print it exactly as I designed it.
Okay, trust the process. And while you're in those settings, you also need to look at print quality, right?
Yes, absolutely. The source says change it to high or best.
Always.
Always. Normal or draft mode lays down less ink. It's faster, but the colors will look washed out. The blacks will look like a dark gray. Best mode tells the printer to slow down, to make multiple passes over the paper, to really saturate the paper fibers with ink. It takes longer, maybe a minute per page instead of 10 seconds, but the difference is night and day.
And the paper type setting, I will admit, I usually just leave that on plain paper. Does it really matter?
It matters immensely. This is one of those hidden variables that has a huge impact. When you tell the printer you are using matte photo paper or brochure paper, you aren't just logging a record for yourself. You are altering the physics of the print head.
You're changing the machine's behavior. How so?
The printer adjusts how much ink it sprays and how fast it dries based on how absorbent it thinks the paper is. If you print on special photo paper but tell the machine it's plain paper, it won't put down enough ink and the image will look grainy and faded.
And the reverse.
If you do the reverse, tell it you're using photo paper but you've loaded plain paper, it might put down too much ink.
And then it becomes a soggy, smeared mess.
Exactly. It will smear, it will pool, it won't dry properly. You have to communicate clearly with the machine. Tell it what you're giving it so it can give you the result you want.
This is amazing. It's like learning a new language, the language of printers. So we've got the hardware, we've got the settings. Now we need to talk about that third leg of the stool. Bleed.
Yes, bleed.
This is a term that I think is very familiar to graphic designers, but for the average person, it sounds like a medical condition.
It does sound a bit visceral, doesn't it? But bleed is simply a design concept. It's a fundamental principle of professional printing. It refers to extending your background image or color beyond the final trim size of the page.
Okay, visualize this for us. Why do we need to do that?
Okay, imagine you're a kid again and you're trying to color a sheet of paper with a marker and you want to color it all the way to the edge. If you try to stop exactly at the edge, you're inevitably going to leave little white gaps because your hand isn't perfectly steady.
Right, where you slip off the edge a bit.
Exactly. But if you put a piece of cardboard underneath the paper and you just color past the edge of the paper onto the cardboard, you get a perfect, solid colored edge every time.
You have to color outside the lines intentionally.
You have to color outside the lines. That's a great way to put it. Now, home printers don't cut the paper like professional shops do. But as the paper feeds through the printer, it shifts. It wiggles.
It's not perfect.
It's a mechanical process. It might shift just by a millimeter. But if your design stops exactly at the 8.5-inch mark,
And the paper shifts by 1 millimeter.
you see 1 millimeter of white paper, the illusion is broken.
So bleed is basically a buffer zone, a margin for error.
Yes. A safety margin in your design. You have to design the background to be slightly bigger than the paper, typically about 1/8 of an inch on all sides. So your design file might actually be 8.75 by 11.25 inches.
And the printer just prints that extra bit off the edge into the sponge we talked about.
That's exactly what it does. The printer overprints slightly larger than the paper to ensure that even with tiny shifts, there are no white edges.
This sounds like a lot of work if you're just starting from a blank Word document. You have to do math and change document sizes.
It is. And this is why the source material highlights the value of templates like those from the funeral program site. These templates are pre-engineered, the bleed is already calculated and built in, the margins are set.
So you don't have to be a graphic designer.
You don't have to be a graphic designer or understand the geometry of paper feed mechanisms. You just open the template, you drop in your photos and your text, and the technical bleed part is handled for you under the hood.
That seems like a lifesaver, especially when you consider the emotional state of the person doing this. You don't want to be doing geometry while you're grieving.
No, you want to focus on the memory, not the margins.
Okay, so let's move from the digital file to the physical object. We need to talk about paper and ink. The source material gets really specific here about the tactile experience.
This is something we often overlook in the digital age. We look at screens all day, but a funeral program is held. It is turned in the hands. It is placed in a pocket or a purse. The paper selection dictates that entire sensory experience.
The source warns against paper that is too thin. Why is that so bad?
Standard copy paper, the stuff you steal from the office printer, is usually 20-pound bond. It's flimsy.
Yeah.
It's slightly see-through. If you print a heavy color photo on one side, it might bleed through to the other side.
That ghosting effect.
Exactly. It makes the text on the other side hard to read. And emotionally, it feels disposable. It feels like a flyer you get on a car windshield. And that is definitely not the vibe we want for a tribute.
No, not at all. So where is the sweet spot? Do we want the thickest cardboard we can find?
No, and the source warns against that too. If you go too thick, like a heavy cardstock, it might jam the printer, as we discussed, or it could crack when you try to fold it, even if you score it.
Okay.
The source recommends a medium weight paper. Technically, you're looking for something in the range of 32-pound to 40-pound text weight, or a light cardstock, maybe 65-pound cover.
It has to have some body to it.
It needs to have enough snap to feel substantial and respectful. It feels like a document, not a handout. But it's still flexible enough to fold cleanly without too much trouble.
And what about the finish? Matte versus glossy. This seems like a big decision.
It is, and it's somewhat subjective, but for funeral programs, the source leans heavily towards matte or a satin semi-gloss. High gloss, like a photo print from the drugstore, can be problematic.
Why is that? Photos look good on glossy paper.
They do, but two things happen in the context of a service. One, fingerprints. People are holding this, passing it around. Maybe they're crying. Maybe their hands are clammy. Glossy paper shows every single smudge.
Ah, right. And the second thing?
Glare. Churches and funeral homes often have very specific lighting bright overhead spotlights or light from stained glass windows. If the program is high gloss, it can act like a mirror. It can actually be hard to read the text if the light hits it wrong.
That's a really practical point. I would never have thought of that.
A matte finish is soft, it's respectful, it absorbs the light, it makes the text easy to read from any angle, and it doesn't show fingerprints. It just feels more dignified.
Let's talk about color psychology for a second.
Yeah.
The source mentions that color accuracy is vital because color sets the emotional tone.
Oh, absolutely. Color is a language. Soft blues, pastels, warm neutrals, these signal peace, rest, gentleness. Deep blacks, charcoal grays, navy, these signal formality, solemnity, reverence.
But if your printer is running out of ink or a nozzle is clogged, those colors change.
They do. They lie. The printer starts making decisions for you. And this brings us to a crucial maintenance ritual that you cannot skip, the nozzle check.
The nozzle check. Sounds like a pre-flight routine for an airplane.
It essentially is. Before you load your expensive paper and hit print on 50 copies, you must run a nozzle check pattern. This is a little test page that your printer software can generate. It prints a grid of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black lines.
Why is this so critical?
Because inkjets clog. It is a fact of life. If one of those tiny nozzles is slightly clogged, say, the cyan is only firing at 80%, you might not notice it in a text document. But if you print a photo of your loved one,
oh no,
that missing cyan will shift all the skin tones.
What happens to the face in the photo?
The face might look too pink or sallow or even green. I've heard horror stories from people who printed everything and realized they had green grandma because the magenta ink was clogged.
Oh, that's horrifying. And you've already wasted all that paper.
It is. It's a disaster. And once you've printed 50 copies, you've wasted the ink and the expensive paper. A simple 30-second test saves you from that heartbreak.
And speaking of ink, the source had a specific warning about mixing brands.
Yes. Consistency is key. Don't start the project with a brand name ink cartridge and then swap in a generic one halfway through.
Why not?
The chemical formulation is different, the colors will shift slightly, maybe the blue isn't quite the same shade. You want copy 1 to look exactly like copy 100. Sticking to one brand of ink for the entire project ensures that consistency.
Okay, so we've designed it with bleed, we've chosen the right paper, we've checked our nozzles, we've used the right settings, we've printed the stack. We are done.
We are absolutely not done. In fact, the source argues that the final step, the assembly, is where the professional look is truly achieved or lost. You can ruin a perfect print with a bad fold.
The fold? It seems so simple. You fold it in half. What could go wrong?
A lot, actually. If you take a piece of thick paper covered in ink and just bend it with your hands, two things happen. One, the fold is rarely perfectly straight. It'll be a little crooked.
Right.
Two, and worse, the paper fibers on the outside of the fold break chaotically, and that often cracks the ink along the spine.
You get that white, jagged crack running down the middle of the cover photo.
Exactly. It looks messy, it looks rushed, it undoes all that careful work.
So how do we prevent that? What's the secret?
The source introduces a simple but vital tool called a bone folder.
A bone folder. It sounds very old-fashioned.
It is, but it's brilliant. It's a smooth, dull-edged tool traditionally made of bone, now often plastic or Teflon. You use it with a ruler to score the paper first. You press down and create a crease before you fold.
Ah, so you're making a guide for the fold.
You're compressing the fibers in a perfect straight line so that when you do fold, the paper knows exactly where to bend. It folds cleanly. It prevents the cracking.
As you're guiding the paper, not forcing it.
Exactly. And once you fold it, you use the flat side of the tool to press the crease down firmly. This keeps the programs from popping open like a tent. It makes them stack neatly, gives it that crisp, finished edge you see from a professional shop.
And there's a note about drying time, too. Patience is a virtue here.
Patience is critical. Inkjet ink is wet. It needs a few minutes to outgas or dry completely. If you grab a sheet fresh out of the tray and immediately start folding and scoring, your thumbs will smudge the ink.
Or transfer it to the other pages.
Or the ink from one page will transfer to the back of another when you stack them. You have to let them sit and breathe for a bit.
It really is a craft, isn't it? It's not just hitting print, it's a whole process.
It is a craft, and that connects back to the value proposition. The source discusses cost versus value. Yes, DIY is often cheaper. You avoid rush fees. You control the quantity. If you suddenly need 10 more, you just print 10 more. You're not calling a shop.
Right, no minimum order.
Exactly. But the real value isn't the money saved. It's the investment of time. The source argues that the time spent scoring, folding, and stapling each program is an investment in the tribute itself. It's a labor of love.
I love that perspective. It reframes the whole experience. Instead of, I have to do this because I can't afford the print shop, it becomes, I get to do this to honor them.
Precisely. It's the last physical thing you can do for them. You can't care for them physically anymore, but you can care for their memory. You can make sure the fold is crisp. You can make sure the color is true. That care is a form of love.
We've covered a massive amount of ground here. I feel like I could actually do this now. We went from the emotional reasons to keep these programs, to the technical triad of edge-to-edge printing, to the importance of paper choice and the art of the fold.
We have. It's been a journey from, fear to confidence, hopefully.
As we wrap up, I want to circle back to that initial fear we talked about. The fear that doing it yourself means less than. that it's a compromise.
I really hope we've dismantled that myth today. The source material is very, very clear on this. Quality depends on knowledge, not location. A home printer, properly set up with the right paper and a thoughtful design, can produce results that rival any commercial shop.
In fact, because of the personal attention to detail, the ability to check every single sheet as it comes off the printer, it can often exceed them.
A print shop is running a job. You are honoring a life. That intention shows up in the final work. You'll catch a typo they might miss. You'll make sure every fold is perfect.
And there's a final philosophical thought the experts leave us with, which I found really moving. They say the program isn't judged by the machine that printed it.
No, it is judged by the life it honors. When a mourner holds that program, they aren't looking at the DPI settings or the ink density. They are looking at the face of their friend. They are reading the lyrics of the hymn.
The paper is just the vessel.
It's the vessel. But by making that vessel with care, by fighting through the printer settings and the paper jams, you are adding your own layer of love and effort to that object, and people feel that.
That is beautiful. It makes you think about the role of active participation in our rituals. You know, in the past, communities used to watch the body, dig the grave, build the coffin. We've outsourced almost all of that.
We have.
But maybe getting ink on your fingers. Maybe hearing the rhythm of the printer running at 2 a.m. Maybe that's a modern way of doing the work, of saying goodbye.
That is a profound thought. The labor allows us to process the loss. It grounds us in the reality of what's happening in a way that just picking up a box from a printer doesn't.
It grounds us. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Whether you are prepping for a service right now or just filing this information away for the future, we really hope this has replaced some of that technical mystery with confidence.
Indeed. Knowledge is the best tool we have in these situations.
Thanks for listening to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. Take care of each other.
Go.